Welcome back, my noble squire. For it is I, King 4, and I bring you a tale of power and a truth no one was meant to uncover. A top-ranked gamer who became the ruler of ruin rises to build an empire for the world's outcasts. Yet behind the shadows of his cursed forest lies a secret far darker than the monsters roaming the lands. Because in this world, the real evil may not be the dark factions at all. Let us begin.
4.
Bedridden and fighting a losing battle with illness, Takuto's only escape from reality is his favorite hardcore strategy game, Eternal Nations. But right in the middle of a massive session, his body completely gives out. His eyes close, but when they snap open again, he isn't in his hospital room. Instead, he's chilling on a massive stone throne, dead in the center of a mysterious, overgrown forest. Completely disoriented, he tries to process the insanity when a familiar voice calls out. He looks down, and his jaw drops. Standing right in front of him is Atu, his absolute favorite top-tier hero unit from the game. He stammers out her name in total disbelief, and she gives him a warm smile, confirming she is 100% real. But then she drops a massive bombshell, respectfully kneeling and calling him King Ira Takuto. Panic sets in. Should he roleplay the evil overlord or confess he's just a normal gamer? But Atu cuts through the tension. She knows exactly who he is. She hypes him up, explaining that he isn't just some random player. He is the absolute legend who cleared the game on its hardest, most punishing difficulty using Minogra, an impossible feat practically nobody else could pull off. In this reality, he isn't just Takuto. He is Ira Takuto, the undisputed top-ranked player. And the craziest part? Atu remembers everything. Every brutal battle, every god-tier strategy, every single victory and defeat. To her, he isn't just a player looking at a screen. He has always been her king. Thinking this might be heaven or a bizarre glitch, Takuto asks how they got here. Atu admits she's totally clueless too, but confirms this world operates exactly like the mechanics of Eternal Nations. Thrilled to be reunited, Atu eagerly suggests they do what they do best: rebuild their ultimate kingdom from scratch. Still reeling, Takuto locks in. He reminds her of the harsh reality. Their faction, Minogra, was notoriously feared as the most evil, terrifying empire in the game. They require a slow, incredibly complex build order. To survive the early game, they have to lay low, completely close their borders, and scale their power in absolute secrecy. Flexing his new ruler abilities, Takuto summons a creepy, four-legged bug scout, ordering it to silently map out the forest. Through a psychic link, he taps directly into its vision, essentially using it as a real-time mini-map. But the ability comes at a heavy cost. The summon instantly drains a massive chunk of his mana pool, leaving his reserves dangerously low. From here on out, every single move has to be flawlessly calculated. After all, a king who burns through his resources commands nothing but dust. Atu fiercely volunteers to be the muscle, but admits her early game stats are still incredibly weak. They absolutely cannot afford to aggro any high-level enemies yet. Peeling his eyes through the scout, Takuto notices a glaring red flag. The forest is completely dead. No animals, no monsters, which means zero food sources. Suddenly, the scout's radar pings. It locks onto a wandering group of dark elves. Atu's eyes narrow. Dark elves are total wildcards. They aren't inherently aggressive, but they definitely aren't trustworthy. If this really is the game world, early contact with another faction could be a total game over. Takuto plays it safe. They'll stalk from the shadows, and if things go south, they hit the emergency eject button and retreat. But before they can even finalize the plan, the Dark Elves physically stumble right into their clearing. Flashback to a few moments earlier. The elves were desperately scavenging for scraps. Their leader, Gia, stubbornly refused to abandon the cursed forest, mostly because their exiled tribe literally had nowhere else to run. Snap back to the present. The elves freeze in absolute terror. To them, Takuto isn't a human kid. His aura is completely masked by a suffocating, terrifying veil of pure darkness. Only Atu can see his true face. Operating on pure survival instinct, Gia drops to his knees, utterly terrified this abyssal god is going to wipe them out, and desperately apologizes for trespassing. Playing the role of the loyal enforcer, Atu interrogates them on Takuto's behalf. Sweating bullets, Gia explains their tragic lore. They are exiles, driven from their homeland, wandering the wilderness on the brink of absolute starvation. Takuto takes one look at their emaciated bodies and feels a pang of pity. Skipping the villain monologue, he simply flexes his power and materializes a pile of fresh, juicy apples right in front of them. The elves flinch, totally clueless about the fruit, but the second they take a bite, their minds are blown by the god-tier sweetness. Takuto casually allows him to keep it, but Gia doesn't take a single bite for himself. Instead, he respectfully begs to take the food back to his starving tribe, prioritizing the children over his own hunger. Moved by the leader's absolute loyalty, Takuto dramatically increases the loot drop, summoning a massive feast. The Dark Elves are completely stunned. Their entire lives they've been hunted and despised. Yet this terrifying, evil entity just gave them a literal lifeline and asked for zero tribute. Unbeknownst to Takuto, he just pulled a masterclass in diplomacy. A ruler who gives in silence builds a loyalty no sword can ever command. Later that night, the elves are having the feast of their lives around the campfire. The tribe's elder, Moltar, nervously asks Gia what the heck he actually encountered out there. Gia describes a being radiating absolute, unfathomable darkness, possibly the very ancient evil sealed within the forest itself. Moltar starts sweating, dropping some heavy lore about the King of Ruin, an apocalyptic being prophesied to appear when the world reaches its limit, wiping out everything to trigger a rebirth. The elder is terrified this dark god will eventually demand a horrifying price for the food. But Gia shuts it down. Demon Lord or not, without him, their people wouldn't have survived. And with that, the King of Ruin has secured his very first loyal subjects. But Elder Moltar isn't buying the free lunch routine. He's lived long enough to know that god-tier power doesn't just hand out favors for nothing. A gentle hand today could easily become a crushing fist tomorrow. But exiled, starving, and out of options, they have zero choice but to crawl back and negotiate. What they don't know, Takuto's Bug Scout is practically live streaming their entire campfire debate. Hearing this, Takuto gets anxious. He knows that when two vastly different factions collide, early game conflict is almost guaranteed. His strategy? Drop the rest of the food and permanently banish them from the forest to avoid any aggro. Since Takuto's communication skills are still basically level 1, Atu steps up as his Grand Vizier. When Moltar and Gia arrive, the elder cautiously approaches and respectfully asks for the king's name. Atu doesn't just answer, she drops the hardest title imaginable. King Ira Takuto, ruler of ruin. The sheer weight of the name alone deals psychic damage to Gia. When Moltar desperately asks how they can repay this massive debt, Atu casually roasts them, flat out stating they are way too broke to offer anything of value. Moltar instantly tenses up. Realizing the diplomacy meter is rapidly dropping, Takuto subtly intervenes. He pivots the negotiation, demanding the one thing more valuable than gold: intel, information about the outside world. Knowledge, after all, is the ultimate currency. Moltar instantly agrees, relieved. But then Atu drops the hammer. Transaction complete. Now take your food and leave the forest forever. Gia is visibly crushed. As the elves turn to leave, Takuto's conscience kicks in. If he boots them out of the safe zone, it's a guaranteed game over for their entire tribe. Thinking on his feet, he pivots hard, deciding to exploit a new mechanic, the refugee system. He offers them full citizenship in his nation. Atu is completely caught off guard. She reminds him that joining Minogra means their faction alignment will forcibly shift, physically altering the elves into literal, evil beings. But Takuto points out a massive tactical advantage. The original Minogra mobs were mindless, unplayable nightmares. Dark elves, however, have actual intelligence. Realizing the genius of the play, Atu relays the ultimate offer. Join the king, gain absolute protection, but embrace the darkness. She leaves the choice in their hands. Cut to the next scene. Takuto and Atu strut into the dark elf camp, wondering why the decision took so long. But they quickly get their answer. The entire tribe is waiting. As Takuto steps forward, his passive boss aura is so violently suffocating that a random elf literally passes out just from standing too close. Takuto takes his seat, and Atu makes it official. From this second forward, the Dark Elves are the foundational citizens of Minogra. Takuto officially drops the banner, founding his kingdom. At first, nothing happens. Gia blinks, wondering if it was just a dramatic speech. But then, the faction alignment kicks in. The elves physically change, their stats skyrocket, and a sudden dark aggression spikes in their blood. Takuto panics, thinking he just corrupted them and ruined their minds. But instead of screaming in terror, the elves break down in tears of absolute joy. For the first time in their tragic lore, they are protected. They finally belong somewhere. They lock in as his fiercely loyal subjects. Fast forward a few days. The honeymoon phase is over, and Takuto is sweating bullets over a world map. Atu asks what's wrong, and he drops some terrifying lore. The continent outside the forest is dominated by two absolute endgame superpowers. The Holy Kingdom of Qualia, a massive human nation of religious zealots, and a hyper-powerful nature elf nation. If either of these juggernauts discovers Minogra while they are this squishy, it's an instant faction wipe. They simply don't have the DPS to survive a war. Even Atu starts to sweat. But Takuto's eyes gleam with a new realization. In the original game, Minogra was notoriously brutal to play because its citizens lacked basic intelligence. But now, his new citizens are highly intelligent, highly adaptable dark elves. The ultimate weakness of the evil faction has just been erased. The meta has officially been broken, and that changes everything. Shortly after the faction merge, the newly buffed trio, Moltar, Gia, and a young elf named Emily, report for duty. Gia hypes up Emily's massive intelligence stat, explaining she's basically a walking encyclopedia of world lore. Recognizing their potential, Atu immediately starts assigning class roles. Moltar is locked in to oversee state affairs, Gia takes the mantle of head warrior, and Emla is appointed as the chief administrative assistant. Atu suggests they immediately start grinding for resources, but Takuto plays the long game. He wants to optimize the land itself. He asks if they can harvest lumber without destroying the biome. Moltar proudly explains their racial trait. They live in harmony with nature and can build structures straight out of massive trees. Takuto approves, but orders them to replant whatever they chop down to maintain sustainability. Crickets. The elves stare back, totally confused. That's when Takuto realizes a massive exploit. The tech tree in this reality is incredibly primitive. Atu steps in to translate his genius, introducing wild concepts like reforestation using advanced magic systems. The elves know basic elemental spells, but the idea of large-scale, tactical, military magic completely blows their minds. Still, Atu smirks. With Minogra's mechanics and enough time to grind, they will easily outscale every other nation on the map. Then, Emily drops a total game-changer. The seeds from the magical apples Takuto summoned earlier, they are already rapidly sprouting. Takuto's brain goes into overdrive as he realizes a completely broken mechanic. His create ability isn't restricted to Eternal Nation's built-in item pool. He can actually materialize items from his original, real-world reality. To test the theory, he focuses, and with a flash of energy, he perfectly spawns a real-world coin. The implications are god-tier. If he can create anything, his only true bottleneck is his maximum mana pool. But while the evil faction secretly scales its power, the rest of the world isn't blind. Miles away, deep within the holy kingdom of Qualia, a high-ranking priestess gets a chilling, ominous vision. The holy radar is going crazy. An apocalyptic threat is rapidly rising from the cursed lands of the Dark Continent. With fresh reports of northern unrest flooding in, she wastes zero time and instantly gears up to make her move. Back in the forest, the Dark Elves happily plant the new seeds, completely unaware that they haven't just found a safe haven. They have just become the foundational units for the most terrifying empire this world has ever seen. Cut to a dangerous frontier. A squad of hardened soldiers is trekking through hostile territory, escorted by a mysterious young girl. The troops are whispering among themselves, highly skeptical. They seriously doubt if this kid actually possesses the god-tier power of a saint, or if she can even put a dent in the monsters ahead. They get their answer immediately. The girl, Soalina, casually steps up to a massive goblin horde and unleashes an absolute nuke of an AoE fire spell. A blazing inferno instantly sweeps the battlefield, vaporizing the entire mob in seconds. The soldiers are completely stunned. But here is the craziest part. As the flames scorch the earth, lush flowers instantly bloom right out of the ashes. Destruction and regeneration cast at the exact same time. It's a terrifying reminder that even the fiercest blaze can become the soil for new beginnings. Their commander drops some heavy lore for the troops. Soalina is one of the legendary 7 Saints, a literal weapon of mass destruction chosen to restore balance to the world. But right now, Soalina doesn't care about goblins. She immediately corners the commander, the Ordinal, demanding to know if he deployed scouts into the dark forest like she asked. The Ordinal sweats, admitting the king blocked the mission. The forest is a massive political minefield, sitting right between 2 rival nations. Sending troops there is basically declaring war. But Soalina isn't taking no for an answer. She flat out threatens to go rogue and solo the forest herself. The Ordinal snaps, reminding her she isn't some random village girl anymore, but eventually caves to her pressure, promising to deploy a Black Ops scouting team. As he walks away, Soalina whispers a cryptic promise to herself. She has to save them. Who exactly is them? We don't know yet, but the plot is thickening fast. Meanwhile, back in the dark forest, Takuto is officially entering the city builder phase. Atu drags him outside for a grand reveal. The once empty clearing has been completely transformed. The Dark Elves have been grinding non-stop, constructing a sprawling, intricately designed treetop village. Gia, Moltar, and Emily roll up, incredibly hyped to show off their progress, and Emily even gifts Takuto a custom-crafted set of royal VIP robes. Fully dripped out and looking like a true ruler, Takuto officially calls the first ever Minogra faction meeting. Moltar delivers the State of the Union. Construction is booming, and they are successfully expanding without damaging the biome. But Atu immediately shifts the focus to their biggest early game bottleneck, the food economy. Moltar suggests Takuto just keep spamming his create food ability, but Atu aggressively shuts that down. If Takuto burns his entire mana pool playing farmer, the kingdom will be completely defenseless, with 0 DPS if a war breaks out. To fix the food crisis, Atu unlocks a new, incredibly twisted piece of Minogra tech, a special, high-yield resource tree. The only catch? The fruit it grows looks, feels, and tastes disturbingly like literal human flesh. Moltar gags, immediately pointing out that absolutely no one is going to want to eat that. But Atu is ice cold. Survival comes first. Culinary aesthetics come later. Finally, they open the tech tree. Moltar asks what they need to research first, and Atu instantly locks in their win condition. Pure, unadulterated magic. They aren't going to build a normal army with swords and shields. They are going to forge a god-tier magical military, designed so that even a single Minogri unit has the power to wipe out entire enemy battalions. Moltar is absolutely hyped. He eagerly takes charge of the magical R&D, and Atu officially appoints him as the head of military development. Gia agrees they need to scale their forces ASAP, pointing out that their current troops have terrible stamina, not to mention that he and Moltar still have massive bounties on their heads from the outside world. Hearing this, Takuto proposes a massive shortcut. They need to summon a hero. Moltar blinks, totally confused by the term. Atu proudly explains the mechanic. Heroes are exceptionally rare, god-tier units created directly by the king. They possess unique, overpowered abilities and absolute loyalty. She promises they will summon one soon, but Takuto looks at his new council and lays down his ultimate vision. He doesn't just want a military base. He wants a prosperous, thriving nation where his people can actually be happy. Because an empire built purely on brute strength will eventually crumble, but a kingdom built on absolute purpose endures forever. Meanwhile, back in the Holy Kingdom, the contrast couldn't be sharper. An under-paladin named Lonius is deep in prayer, preparing for their secret operation. His superior, High Paladin Verdal, interrupts the solemn moment. They share some banter, revealing that Lonius has a wife and daughter waiting for him back home, planting a massive, terrifying anime death flag. The mood gets heavy. This mission is completely off the books and incredibly dangerous. Verdal is highly suspicious. They are the only two paladins assigned, and their entire squad is made up of disposable, sketchy mercenaries. But orders are orders. They have no choice but to march forward. Back in Minogra, it's time for the VIP village tour. Emle proudly guides Takuto through the rapidly expanding settlement. The Dark Elves have masterfully integrated their homes right into the living trees, building a highly efficient society with a central government hub. Takuto is genuinely blown away. Just days ago, this was a dead forest, and now it's a living, breathing civilization. When he sincerely praises their hard work, Emla gets entirely overwhelmed with emotion and starts crying tears of joy. Takuto, ever the socially awkward gamer, doesn't quite know how to handle the tears, but is deeply moved by their loyalty. Continuing the tour, Emily shows off their booming harvest, profusely thanking Takuto for the overpowered farming tools he created for them. But when she leads him to the newly discovered spring meant for their aqueduct, panic sets in. The water looks completely contaminated, radiating a dark, murky aura. But Atu just smirks. Without hesitation, she scoops up a handful and drinks it straight down. She explains a wild faction mechanic. The water isn't toxic, it's corrupted. For good or neutral beings, it's deadly poison. But for the evil faction, it's a literal permanent stat buff. Gia takes a sip and instantly feels his strength surge. Still trying to process everything, Moltar circles back to the hero concept, admitting he still doesn't quite grasp how strong they are. Atu decides words aren't enough. With a casual, lightning-fast strike, she unleashes a shockwave that cleanly slices through an entire row of massive trees. The Dark Elf's jaws hit the floor. Atu turns back with a smug grin and drops the reveal. She is a hero unit. Takuto casually adds that the craziest part about heroes isn't their base stats, it's their passive scaling. They constantly generate EXP and grow exponentially stronger over time, even when they do absolutely nothing. Moltar and Gia are left in pure awe, staring at Atu like she's a goddess. Takuto, however, just sighs and scolds Atu for being a show-off, ordering her to clean up the massive mess of timber she just dropped in the middle of their base. She nervously laughs and apologizes. But while Minogra enjoys its peaceful expansion, the threat is inching closer. In the distance, the Holy Kingdom's Black Ops squad, led by the paladins and mercenaries, violently hacks their way through monsters, pushing dangerously deep into the frontier. A collision course with the Dark Forest has officially been set. And with that, Takuto and his loyal Dark Elves step off the path of simple survival and into a dark, world-conquering promise. Their unbreakable alliance has been forged, but their true war against the Holy Kingdom of Qualia has only just begun. But tell me, will the ruler of ruin rewrite the destiny of this world, or be swallowed by the overwhelming forces of the light? And so, my loyal squire, this chronicle comes to an end. If you wish to see what comes next, speak it below. And perhaps the next chronicle shall be revealed.